Homeland Tower's presentation so that you have all the most recent information at the time you comment. Thank you. Does anybody wish to comment?
Yes, Peter, I have hands risen. I will start with the first hands. Again, please state your name in full and the hamlet that you live in, and you have 2 minutes. I'll give you a 30-second warning. And I ask Susan Enos to unmute, please.
Hi, I would like to make a comment later, so I didn't realize there were 2 public comment sessions. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Next, we have Stephanie Tremaine. Stephanie, I'm asking you to unmute.
I can mute again.
Stephanie? I think I can hear you, Stephanie. Okay, I'm going to lower Stephanie's hand. Next, we have Scott Evans. I'm asking you to unmute, please.
Hi, Janet, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I'm Scott Evans, live in South Salem at Truesdale Lake, and the comment is regarding the cell tower, and regardless of design, it would disfigure the view from hundreds of homes in our area, and it would also affect everybody.
With due respect, sir, we asked you to wait for the second comment period.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
In order, which will be devoted entirely to the cell tower.
Okay, I'm off, Peter.
Thanks.
Okay, so I will lower the hand, and I believe there are no other hands up, Peter. So that's it for public comment.
In that case, I'd like to move to close the public comment period. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Communications. First of all, Peter Harcum and I seem to have had some success in persuading the DOT not to put glyphosate along the side of the state roads. They've cut them short, so they look pretty dead, but they have not been poisoned. That's progress. There are no promises made not to do it again, but at least this time we seem to have got somewhere.
So that's town-wide then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, town-wide on state roads.
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, they wouldn't be doing it on town roads anyway, I guess, right? So,
No, they wouldn't. They,
yeah.
They don't admit there are any, do they?
No, that will be welcome news to a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, that's why I, quite honestly, was talking about it.
Yeah.
Secondly,
Peter, before you go on, I think there's someone on the video, unless I'm the only one seeing this, who's screen sharing a blank screen.
Yes,
Yes.
I've got Joel working on it.
Okay, I think they were
Joel's
having
working on it right now.
video issues.
secondly,
Yes.
George, I'd like to congratulate George Scott. I've at last got round to catching up on my trail walker. And this spring, he was shouted, you know, he got applause and a general shout out for his contributions to trails, not only in Lewisboro, but in the New Jersey-New York Trail Conference, and for the amount of trails, mileage of trails he has built, 14.4 miles. He has worked hard to ensure their sustainability and access to all who wish to use them for 20 years. He manages a crew that meets weekly to accomplish trail maintenance. George also uses every possible opportunity to recruit the public to volunteer with the Trail Conference. Just congratulations, George. I'm glad somebody is recognizing the amount of work you've done. Next, I received congratulations for Officer Erica Holt's help when somebody was struck ill in their house, a person in a wheelchair. So, and she was a great help. And that's good. But what is bad is the amount of time the police force of Lewisboro is spent investigating the theft of signs. There are signs of all kinds. It isn't Black Lives Matter signs only, or All Lives Matter signs only, or thin blue line signs matter. It is all of those that are being stolen. The amount of time it takes them to investigate each one, even cursorily, is absurd. Absurd because they could be doing a lot of other beneficial things instead of that, which I'm not sure benefits anybody. So I really would ask everybody to stop stealing political signs off somebody's property.
Thanks, Peter. I've been trying to just kind of flag everybody for a while, and this will bring us back to our beginning statement about our expectations for public comment. And there were a couple statements made before you got on about, but I'm wondering if we notice something on video, whose responsibility is it to call that out? And I'm a little bit concerned about
on
the
video now.
Excuse me,
are you talking
I'm
about?
not done. I have waited my turn to speak, and I just
Okay.
let me ask my questions so you can answer them. Let me get them all out, and then anyone can answer them. Thank you so much. So I also wonder about the security, because somebody was screen sharing and it wasn't anybody from the townhouse or on the board. So that's why I turned my video off, because I'm just uncertain now about what's going on in the environment. And
If I can just,
I'm wrong to be thinking that, but yeah, Anthony. Right.
if I could add to that, Councilwoman Crimmins, it would certainly be appropriate for the board. I'm just noticing there's an individual from the beginning of the meeting who I now see again on my screen that does not have a shirt on. It would be appropriate for the board to require that everyone who is posting video during a town board meeting do have a shirt on. I don't know if we have the ability to stop someone's video, or if we could just address the individual directly and ask him to turn his video off.
Okay, I'm going to go on with other items and come back to you. All right.
Well, I think we've asked politely now. This is the third time. So if you are in attendance and you don't have a shirt on, you're being asked to dress appropriately for the meeting.
Okay.
Evening.
Okay, thanks.
I think,
Beyond
dressing
that,
as if you're attending any other meeting in person is, a minimum requirement to attend a board meeting, and keep your video on. If you don't want to keep your video on, that's fine, and you can be in the comfort of your own home.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
I would like to
resolve
move
that now.
on.
Thank you.
We have a technical problem which prevents the controller giving us the financial update tonight. So I'm going to go straight on to a discussion regarding expanding the purpose of the Antenna Advisory Board and setting a public hearing on it. It's quite simply to increase the breadth of that board by including fiber, optic, and other similar technology in their domain. Quite honestly, we've not kept up with the way technology has been moving forward, and we need to have that board not only look at cell towers, but also look at fiber technology, on which this town is pitifully short. I'd like to make a motion to set a public hearing on August 10th, 2020 at 7:30. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have a discussion?
Yes.
We do.
So
Now I'm going to ask for a discussion after we've got a second.
okay, thanks. So the number of members on the board, that wasn't something I want to ask again why it's 5.
Because all boards are 5. How about that for a bad answer? But that's the number of people we have on the ZBA. That's the number of people we have on the planning board, and even, believe it or not, on the town board.
Are they a voting board?
Yes,
What do they vote on?
they vote on their recommendation to the town board on cell towers. And if this is passed, also fiber.
Right, but they're an advisory board. They're not.
They're an advisory board, yes.
Thank you, Anthony.
Hey,
Right,
So-
so that's why, so with an advisory board, you can certainly have more than 5. We might want to make it an odd number for the purposes of voting.
Well, what do you want to go to, Jane?
I want to keep it flexible and speak to people that, would be part of the group.
I think we
So-
have to choose a number.
Right tonight or for the public hearing?
I'd like to before that
No,
public
you
hearing.
would. If you'd like to rush it, yes, I hear you. And I guess I want to open it up to the rest of the board. And if nobody else has anything to say, then we'll go with 5.
Yeah, actually, I do have something to say. So Peter, the definition, I meant to call you today about that and I didn't, but I'd like to see it modified a little bit.
Okay,
The establishment and purpose of the tenant advisory board, where it says fiber optic and other similar technology. We should say used for communication, voice communication, data services, and video streaming.
okay.
Be my recommendation.
I'll second that.
And-
Discussion.
That's great. I just want to make sure that we loop. Thank you, Tony. I totally agree with that change in language. I like the specificity and the clarification, but just so we can not drop the number of the people in the committee.
Well, so my second point as the town board liaison to the intent advisory board, I do think 5 is a sufficient number.
Okay, great.
And there's enough flexibility in as much as, the meetings are all theoretically open to the public and people
Correct.
can stop in and, share their thoughts, and we do that on certain other committees and.
Yeah, I guess to be transparent with the people we've been talking to who are going to be helping us make this transition, I can't speak for that individual, but at the same time, like who might, but when we talked about the restructuring, we talked about it in, we talked about this number and we hadn't decided then until tonight, but now we're having the open discussion and that's what this is about. So I think that's fair enough. I hear Peter proposed it. I had talked about this last, we talked about it. I brought it up now publicly and Tony said as the liaison, he thinks 5 is sufficient and you think it makes perfect sense. So I hear you and that's a majority.
And I think I'm imagining, but Anthony, tell us, like, if we decide in the next meeting and the hearing that, what 7's better than 5 or whatever, because we got some more input along the way, that's not a change that would require another posting and another hearing period. I'm guessing it's not substantive to that extent, but.
Well, it is subset. I mean, it's kind of interesting because you have, it's 5 now. Okay, it's 5 now in the code. You have a proposal tonight, at least, to go to 7. Councilman Gonzalez made a change that I made a note of to add use for voice communications, data services, and streaming. I think I have that right.
That's correct.
Okay. If you leave it as 5 and you notice your public hearing for 5, which is what currently exists in the code, you're not really proposing a change to that. So you would have to go to another public hearing for that. You could leave it as 7 if you're still considering 7, and after the public hearing, go back to leave it at 5. You've proposed a change. You could decide not to make the change.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but if you're not making the change, you can't just throw another change,
All right.
into the.
I would defer to Tony if you want to leave flexibility for more discussion until, up to then you change it to 7 with the intent of changing it back to 5. But I have no problem leaving it at 5 though.
I have no problem leaving it at 5.
All right.
End of discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Hi.
I'd like to move on to asking somebody to propose a resolution for the Tri-Town Senior Citizen Nutrition Program Agreement and authorizing me to sign it.
We need both of those, or can't we just authorize you to sign it?
Sorry?
I think we can just authorize you to sign it. As
Yeah, I can make the motion. I move to authorize the supervisor to sign the resolution
Okay.
in the Tri-Town Senior Citizen Nutrition Program.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I would like to propose a resolution which acknowledges Lewisboro's lead in a joint study of Lake Kitchewan with the town of Pound Ridge for the NEIWPCC grant. I can actually look up what that stands for. It begins with New England. We have got, as you probably know, a grant to look at engineering better wastewater treatment in Lake Wacabuck of 200 to 375,000, and in Lake Truesdale and Lake Kitchewan for 200 to 425,000. Each of those Lake Truesdale and Truesdale and Lake Wacabuck are entirely in our town. Kitchewan is partially in Pound Ridge. So they have agreed to cede the lead to us, and we have to agree to take the lead. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks to Jan Anderson, right?
Yeah. And thanks, quite honestly, to your supervisor for getting the money.
This-
Good job, Peter.
I'd like to propose a resolution approving the Westchester Aquatic Club agreement and authorizing the superintendent of Parks and Recreation to sign it. This is an agreement which brings in a little revenue in exchange for them using the pool once we have closed the pool to our own members. Do I have a second?
Second.
They also give us a little money to do this. Do I have a second?
I second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to propose a resolution regarding a permissive referendum on a town property on Lake Truesdale. It's written out in full by Anthony.
Yeah, the resolution is technically a resolution to dispose of the property by sale, auction, or otherwise, which will be subject to permissive referendum.
We've already discussed this. What we forgot, quite honestly, was it requires a permissive referendum for it to move forward. I don't know if each member of the board has walked the property, but it is a small property with a rectangular property with a stream running through the middle of it, and the rest of it populated by plants which only occur in wetlands. In that, it's a property which is unlikely to ever be built on. It is not got lake frontage. It's a corner property between Lakeshore Drive and Truesdale Lake Drive. Do I have a second to request or to allow us to move forward on this with putting out a resolution allowing a permissive referendum if sufficient people wish that to happen?
Well, the resolution is, as Anthony stated, right?
Yes,
To declare that we're going to go ahead with the sale of the property. That
yes,
resolution is constrained by the time period you have to allow for the permissive referendum to
yes,
come out, right? So where the resolution is actually to authorize the sale of that property.
Right. It's not
yes.
how we sell it or who we sell it to. It's just that this is the next step no matter what.
Yeah, it doesn't compel us to, if we don't get offers that or make sense or something.
It doesn't bind us.
Okay.
Sounds
So,
like it. I had that same, I'm on the same page as you, so somebody
I
correct.
just wanted to clarify. So the resolution is to authorize the sale of the property. I second the resolution.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Let's move on to the presentation on the potential coverage of a cell tower in South Salem. Hi, Ray. I see you there in the bottom right. Can somebody unmute Ray Vergati?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, now.
Hi, Ray.
All right.
All right.
For the record, Ray Vergati with Homeland Towers, Regional Manager. First and foremost, I just want to thank the board this evening to have the opportunity to speak to the board and the community about the proposed cell tower project. I was last in front of the camera, not before the board physically, but on June 22nd, where we had presented via a Zoom meeting site plans for 2 locations. We called it an A location, B location. The A being the Salt Dome located at 81 Spring Street, and the B location being the 11 Main Street, the DPW or behind the town hall location. We presented site plans for each location. We also presented visuals for each location and went through those sets with the board. We were tasked to come back with some additional information. One being if we were to go to the Salt Dome property, which is kind of evident, at least from what we understand would be the town's preference over the DPW site. If we were to go to the Salt Dome property, is there any other location on that parcel itself where we could site the tower and so forth? So we did work with the town engineer, the highway department, Peter Rippinger, and the location, the initial location we had picked out was determined to be the best on the property for various reasons, but primarily it keeps out of the daily activities of the Salt Dome. It also keeps the cell tower area out of the wetlands. So that was one item that the board had asked us to look into. The second item that was brought up was there were some comments made about that particular parcel in the back behind the Salt Dome that was deeded to the town a number of years ago, that it had restrictions or covenants. I had represented to the board on the 22nd of June that we were pending title on that property. We had since received title and reviewed it. We did not come across any restrictions. The only covenant restriction that we can find on the Westchester County land records is that that lot, that 1 acre lot that was brought into the Salt Dome lot was not a habitable lot, meaning you cannot put a residential home or dwelling on it. So we did not see any issues that would not allow us to move forward with the cell tower on that property as well. And the third item, like a homework assignment the town had asked for, were coverage plots. And we've worked with our vendor, Puricon, to get those plots. I have those tonight. I'm not sure how the board wishes to proceed on this. I can do a screen share, or if it pleases the board, they have it, they want to bring it up, I can walk the town board members through those plots. Ideally, I think we're still in the infant stage of this. No decisions are made. we came in this project with an A and a B location. I think we are leaning strongly and listening to the public and the town that the Salt Dome is a more optimal location for a cell tower. And we're proposing 130 feet at the Salt Dome. It would have been 120 at the DPW site. So we'd like to try to move forward with the Salt Dome with the town. If we go through the presentation tonight, I think the next appropriate step that we would ask for is to maybe do a publicly noticed balloon float, because a lot of times people don't understand where the views are, where they're not. And a balloon float helps people gain that understanding. And potentially we can schedule that this evening, look at a few dates, and we would publicly notice it. We would have it on a weekend to give the benefit of people that work during the day or weekenders the opportunity to see it in person. And we would also, ask that from the board tonight, obviously. So if you'd like, I can certainly bring up the coverage plots, or I'm not sure if the town has them and would like to put them on the screen and I can go through them.
Is it easier for you, Ray, if I put it up on a screen, or?
Sure, if you want to do that, Tony, and I can walk you through and explain each plot.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so what you have before you is, we like to call this the stealth bomber. It's kind of an interesting shape, town boundary that the town of Lewisboro has. So these are existing coverage plots, and I'll get into the colors and the keys that you see down below. But basically, this is your town boundary showing where there's existing coverage on Verizon's network. And I do want to step back and say this particular project right now is for Verizon as the anchor tenant to go through zoning with us and install on the tower. However, the tower would be made available for not only Verizon, but for AT&T, T-Mobile, and other carriers, obviously. So what you have before you is the outline of the town. I want you to just take the opportunity and kind of give the public and the board just the history of what's gone on here in town over the past 20, 25 years or so. The bottom kind of right-hand corner of the town, which is labeled South Salem. And I'll talk about some of these labels so that it's not confusing for people looking at the map, but the blue dot that's labeled South Salem, that is the existing lattice tower that is on the Leon Levy Preserve, also known as the Bell property. And that was one of the first towers that came into the town. And it did a nice job filling in Route 35, 120, 123 intersection. The second site that came into fruition was to the west side of town, which is Golden's Bridge, if you're familiar with the existing monopole tower on Route 684. And that provided some coverage relief, filling the gap for the carriers along the 684 and western portions of the town. The third site that came on board is really down in the southeast corner, which is called Eastwoods. And that is right on Route 23, and that is located at the Vista Fire Department. That's a 150-foot tower that Homeland Towers built. The fourth site is called Cross River, and that could be a little misleading. It's at the town park. And that is a site that is also on air. And that was the fourth site that came in and started filling more of the central location in the corridor of 35. The fifth site that came on was Walkabuck, and that's up in the northwest corner on Route 138, and that is a Homeland Tower. It's a monopole tower at 150 feet. And the sixth recent site, most recent, that came on air is Homeland's Tower site that's labeled Katona, that Tony has the crosshairs on, and that is at the Lewisboro Volunteer Ambulance Corps. So there's 6 sites that have come on air over the past 20 plus years. And I think the tower companies have done a good job. I think Homeland has done a good job in trying to provide really critical infrastructure to this town. I can only imagine, or folks can only imagine what it would be like if none of these 6 sites were on air. And they all came with opposition. Someone had an opinion, and we respect that, obviously. But at the end of the day, these sites serve critical infrastructure. They provide critical communications for public safety and for cell phone users. I think everyone can agree it's improved the quality of life and they've become part of the landscape. I wanted to put this slide up because it basically shows where there's existing coverage. And really what Homeland sees or foresees is that potentially there's just 2 other locations or 2 other sites that would be needed to provide coverage. And Tony, maybe if you want to go to the second slide. So this is a site, pretty much the same. I wanted to show this because Homeland Towers is working on a project to your neighbors to the north in North Salem. And we are proposing a facility at the Hammond Museum. And I want to show this because that site to the north would certainly have some coverage benefits to the residents of Lewisboro. Not all the way, but certainly traveling the corridor of 121 and bleeding into the northern section of town. You can go to the next slide.
Oops. Okay.
So Ray, that North Salem Tower, what we see on this coverage map anticipates that, even though it's not up yet.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I wanted to give the board the benefit of showing if we are successful in getting that site approved, it is a 100-foot monopine tower that we are proposing there at the Hammond Museum. And we're hopeful that it would be approved and kind of fill in a puzzle piece in the northern section of this area.
Okay. Just wanted
So-
to.
Ray, of the 6 towers we have in town, 3 of those are Homeland, correct?
That is correct. Walkabuck, Katona, and Eastwoods are 3 towers that Homeland developed.
Right. And the question on the North Salem Tower, what is the status of that tower?
We've been in zoning on that for about a year. It's just going back into zoning. We had to do some additional view shed work. So that's a little further along in the process, but we're in the zoning process.
Okay, thank you.
And that will not be a silver bullet, meaning if that site is approved and it's built at 100 feet, that site will not provide coverage to where the Salt Dome site is that Homeland Towers is currently proposing. Too far away, too much terrain and topography in the middle to provide any relief.
Where did you say that site is in North Salem? At a museum?
Yes, the Hammond Museum. Which
Okay.
Yes, 28 DeVoe Road is the Hammond Museum.
All right.
So as you can see, the sites, there's a rhyme and reason when you look at a map with the blue dots of existing sites, and you can kind of start to see the puzzle pieces where things need to fill in. The sites, you know, they're not spread out far apart because quite frankly, they just don't cover that much given the terrain here in town and the challenges that the frequency has to penetrate. So we are looking to split the difference between the Cross River site, obviously, and the South Salem or the Leon Levy Preserve site. So on the particular location there in map, you see the pink dot, which is labeled Salt Dome. And for the sake of tonight, we are only providing coverage plots for the Salt Dome. We are not providing plots for the DPW site. So, Tony, if you scroll back out or zoom back out so people can see the key on the bottom there, Verizon basically operates their network, and it can be confusing, and I'm not an RF engineer, but I'll try to put it into layman's terms. There's 2 frequencies that they use, really 3, but primarily the 2 are the 700 and the 2100. And the best way that I describe it is the 700 performs much better in rural areas. The frequency propagates out much further. The 2100 is really for more densely populated, I don't want to say urban areas, but more where it's just densely populated and so forth. The plot that's before you right now on this is existing and proposed at the Salt Dome, and the colors, the green and the yellow, are existing. The blue and the purple would be what would be proposed or what would be gained from the site. And basically the purple would be what we call a neg 105 or in-vehicle or outdoor coverage. And the blue would be proposed in building, which is a lower neg 95. This map has the North Salem site at the Hammond Museum on here as well. And this is at 126. So if you wanted to go to the next slide. This is just more of a zoomed in, showing basically the existing 700 coverage that's zoomed in right now. What Verizon is attempting to do, and this is not just Verizon. I remember working the site for Nextel Communications back in 2004, I believe it was. There's always been a need here. It hasn't gone away, and Verizon's need is still here. They're trying to certainly penetrate the community to the north, the Lake Truesdale community points north, as well as the 35. There is some blips on 35 that need coverage, meaning there's drop calls and so forth. So this is more of a zoomed in, not showing any coverage, it's just showing the existing. Again, green is in building, meaning in your home where you can have reliable coverage. Yellow meaning outdoor in vehicle when you're driving or out walking a trail or hiking where you have reliable coverage for Verizon standards. You can go to the next slide. Next slide.
I have a question, Ray. So the green, which is reliable in building.
Yes.
So if for someone driving 35, does this chart indicate that it's not reliable?
No, it
From end to
actually,
end?
it indicates that it's reliable to an extent because I mentioned earlier, Verizon's not just using the 700 frequency. They're using the 2100 frequency as well. And as we go down through the slides, you'll see the difference in how robust the 700 is in coverage and how minuscule the 2100 is. And Verizon relies on the 2100 as well for their subscribers.
Now, is that the difference between 3G and 4G, 700 versus 2100?
Not
Or is
necessarily.
that different? Okay.
Yeah, everyone, you know, the 3G, 4G, that just basically stands for the next third generation, fourth generation, 5G, fifth generation. It's really being driven by faster speeds, getting these sites eventually closer toward the end user, getting into the driverless cars and quick and data speeds and so forth.
Right.
Before we leave this map, as I look at it, I'm forced to wonder, hey, is there a good site like just over the Ridgefield border that actually gives us, you know, at least that coverage or better? Because I know in my mind it starts to go up there. It's a little higher. I don't know.
Yeah, we've developed a site in Ridgefield over on Aspen Ledges Road, over by 116. It does not get up over the ridge. In addition, many folks may be aware of the Mountain Lakes that's to the north, and that is park property.
Right.
And there's actually been a tower that the county owns that has just been rebuilt. The problem at hand is that it's a county tower, and for 25, 30 years, the carriers have asked to co-locate on that tower. The county's not willing to do it. They'd have to go through what's called a parkland alienation process, and it's just not going to come to fruition.
Even though the tower is already there.
Correct. It's strictly public safety, just county public safety.
Right. And if they, in other words, if they allowed co-location, there would be a private usage, even though there's no footprint change or anything required like that. It's the private usage that requires the alienation.
It's a parkland alienation process because it's deemed parkland. You would have to go through the state legislature, and it's just something the county is not willing to do, nor have they ever been willing to do in the past 25 years.
Yeah, no, I understand what the alienation process is. I'm just curious as to what actually triggered it, because in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, you know, the tower's already there. You're not sort of taking away parkland from people. But maybe what it is, maybe it's the allocation to private usage.
That's commercial use, correct? Yes, there's ground space where equipment needs to go, and there's commercial use on parkland, and that's what triggers it. Yeah, so it's not an option for us. Never has been for the carriers. Look, if they're part of my job is when I come into an area, I look for existing structures, as I mentioned, you know, a month and a half ago in my presentation. If there's a rooftop, a water tank, an existing tower, a power line, the carriers will always go there first. They have to. But when there is no existing structure with adequate height, you have to build a new tower. Just like these 6 towers that have been built in town. There were no existing structures that afforded the luxury of carrier to co-locate. So if you want to go to the next slide.
Okay.
So we just ran 3 coverage plots at 3 heights for the site. 146.
Slide 5, right?
Coverage, I'm sorry? This is the plot at 146 feet. I don't want to confuse anybody. We are actually proposing 130, but for the benefit of the board, I wanted to show what 20 feet addition would look like. So this is what we call 146 plot at the Salt Dome at the 700 frequency. If you scroll to the next slide, you'll see the 126 coverage footprint, which is, you don't lose that much. There's still a decent amount of proposed in building. And then if you go to the next slide, you'll see at 106. So we ran it in 20-foot intervals. And at 106, we feel that there is a considerable loss in coverage. We want to make the site co-locatable, meaning we want to design it at 130 feet for the other carriers. And we feel it's an appropriate site at this location.
So what we're looking at here is the additional pink and light blue, right? So
correct. The
So if I-
additional pink and light blue at 106 feet versus 126 versus 146.
right.
As I explained to you on the phone, I think this is where it becomes critical to have some estimate of the number of additional homes covered by each height of tower.
Absolutely. And I'll take that up with the engineers, supervisor.
Because quite honestly, I'm going to get murdered for this, but the 146 looks rather tempting.
Well, it's tempting for the northern areas, right? In terms of
Yes.
in-vehicle coverage. That's this slide. So it's the pink up north of Boughton.
Yeah.
We are not saying no to 146. We're just simply proposing this at 130 right now. If the board feels it appropriate, and that happens on applications where a zoning board or planning board will look at it and say, well, you know what? Why don't you just make it higher now so we know it's not going to go taller in the future? And as long as it's visually does not be extreme or have an impact to the community, 146 could be an appropriate height. I think when we go to do a balloon float, what we would do is we would potentially float it at 150 and then put a ribbon at 130 and put a ribbon at 110. And this way everybody can understand the various heights that we'd be proposing.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Ray.
So if you go to the next slide. So this is what I was talking about before. This is the 2100, which really has a much smaller coverage footprint. This is an existing footprint in the town of Lewisboro. The greens are reliable in building, meaning in homes or in a building structure. The yellows are outdoor. You can see there's a much more white on the 2100 frequency, obviously. That's why it's a balancing act. When a carrier runs these various frequencies, it's just not 700. They're using 2100 as well. So this is existing 2100 in the town. If you go to the next slide, it shows the same 2100, again, with that North Salem site to the north. I just wanted folks to see how it may affect their commute or traveling the 121 corridor if we're successful in getting that site approved and constructed.
Help me again, Ray. What are the advantages of 2,100 megahertz?
The 2100 is just a frequency. It's more of a robust for the carriers, and it's not used strictly in dense populated urban areas. It's just a higher frequency with a smaller footprint. The carriers are able to deliver higher bandwidth applications on the 2100, video, data, things of that nature.
Okay.
So Ray, are these frequencies similar to, so this is Verizon, but is AT&T, for example, using the same frequencies?
They do. They all pretty much run with the 700, 2100, 1900 frequencies. Yes.
So these plots or these charts should reflect AT&T coverage as well.
Correct. Now, what's before you was just for Verizon, obviously,
Right.
and how they're on these existing sites. They don't represent AT&T's network, but they generally run in the same frequencies and have the same footprint. Now, sometimes when you have a carrier that is on the top of the tower, let's say at 150, and you have got a carrier below at 130. Well, typically the carrier on the 150 top spot, because this is line of sight technology, typically they will have a larger footprint than the one below.
So AT&T currently is not on the Katona tower, which is the LVAC tower.
Correct.
But if they were, this would be representative of their reach or their coverage.
It would
correct?
be very similar, yes. It would be very similar. Sometimes the AT&T engineer may orient their antennas to a different location, meaning a different road that people are traveling. But for the most part, it's safe to say that what you see here would more or less be the same footprint or coverage for an AT&T subscriber. Should an AT&T, in this case, come to the Katona or the LVAC site there in Cross River.
Okay.
Okay, the next slide. The next slide is just shows, again, the existing 2100 footprint, as well as the purple is the in-vehicle 2100, and the teal blue would be in-building 2100. And again, I just want to point out that logistically, when you look at this magenta dot labeled Salt Dome, it really falls nicely in the middle of Cross River and South Salem. And it's a nice puzzle piece, obviously, for the carriers. Next slide, forgive me. It's just a zoomed in to 2100. You can see a decent amount of white on there, especially Truesdale Lake community going to the north. Even on 35, you've got some white on the 2100.
So today I actually, just as a test, I drove this route. I mean, I live up in Golden's Bridge. I came down 121, 35, and I went into Spring Street and basically followed the lake around. So, and I actually was able to hold a call. So even though this is showing white, it doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to have reception.
Correct. The carriers have what's called, reliable coverage. There may be some coverage out there if you're in your car, but when you travel different times of the year, different amount of subscribers on a network, they want to make sure that they have a very high, like a gold standard for their network to hold that call, obviously, and not drop call. Look, people sometimes say, well, you're here as a matter of convenience. And I just want to remind people that Homeland Towers does not, throw a dart at the map and say this is where a tower is going to be. This is driven by the carriers, and these sites are very expensive to build and to permit. And we wouldn't be here if there wasn't a need, obviously, for the carriers, in this case, Verizon. So there's certainly a need looking at the 2100 and the 700 as well. So this is the 2100. If you want to go to the next slide.
So the 2100, did I understand that you're saying that like AT&T, they sort of default to the 2100 standard versus Verizon at the 700 standard?
They both use the frequencies of 700 and 2100, AT&T and Verizon. They also use, I believe, 1900 as a third frequency.
Yes,
they all use both, or all of them. Okay, and it's not so like when they put their equipment up there, they are out there sending out signals on all of those bands.
Correct. They're not just strictly using a 700 or 2100. Their network is like an amoeba. It breathes and it contrasts and shrinks, and it all depends on how many users are on it at a given point. That's why you may notice when you're on 684 or traveling certain areas during rush hour, if you're in a traffic jam, where you may have had a very, 4 or 5 bars one day, held a call, the next time you travel through, you don't hold the call because it's a capacity issue, meaning the network can only handle X amount of phone calls or data. So the network that the carriers are using or trying to, extend shrinks and breathes, and they try to make it as best they can, obviously, with the different frequencies.
Well, in the test I did today, and I'm an AT&T subscriber, I was able to hold a call from just east of North Salem, 121 here, all the way to the Connecticut border. And then on the way back, again, this is on the same call, talking with my wife, longest conversation I had with her in a while. I was able to circle, take Main Street, and then go on, I think it's Lakeshore Drive, which runs behind the townhouse, and then around on Bowway. And I didn't lose the call until I got to here, around this area.
Sure.
And then Boughton, like between Boughton and here. And then this stretch of Boughton, I was not able to connect, which is interesting because here there's, yellow and green, and here there's not. But I was more successful in holding a call here than I was here. And then going back, going eastbound, I was able to maintain the call without a problem. Going westbound, I lost the call here at the mobile station, and then I lost it again over by the firehouse, which is, I guess, somewhere around here. That may be related to your point about, the capacity issues and reallocation of capacity by the carriers.
Yeah, it's important for people to understand as well. A lot of times when you see a coverage map on a carrier's website, it doesn't paint a true picture. I think a lot of times it's just done for marketing, obviously. These are the real coverage plots, and really drill down to individual roads in a town to show. But on Supervisor Parsons' point, as a homework assignment, we will look at the coverage on a per residential, how many homes are covered at 2,100 versus 700, and be able to give a good approximation of the number of homes that would benefit from a facility at the Salt Dome.
Right.
Tony, what I'm also hearing is that we have an accident on 35, just as we are going towards Ridgefield. And we have pretty quickly 200, 300 cars all lined up. And they're all desperate to make calls. And we've got a problem unless we've got really strong coverage, right?
That's what I'm hearing. Yeah, I mean, when I drove today, it was middle of the day, around lunch hour. I went into Connecticut, came back, was able to maintain the call without a problem. And it really wasn't until, and circling Lake Truesdale was fine.
It's kind of different if you're driving either at 7:30, 8 in the morning,
right,
or driving at between 4:30 and 6 o'clock.
Right. So that could be another good test. Maybe do that same drive. But really, at the mobile station, I could not reconnect. I pulled over, tried to make the call, and it wouldn't go through. And that's here.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, this is, we're looking at, we're talking about in-vehicle or outdoor coverage. Certainly when we call in-building coverage, the benefits that a subscriber uses or will have is not only be able to make a call from their home, which we've all figured out what's going on in the world these days, and homeschooling and businesses out of the house, how important it is, but wireless security systems. I mean, the list goes on and on with the benefits, obviously, for in-building as well. But this just shows, I want to present these to the board tonight, obviously, so you can gain an understanding. I think there might be 3 more slides we can take a look at.
Yep. This is slide 12.
Slide 12 just shows the 2,100. I think the last 3 slides basically are the same. It just shows the 146, the 126, and the 106. Right. So you can see, again, as a comparison that we did on the 700 plot, you can see the 3 different heights and how the footprint shrinks when you go from 146 to 126 to 106.
Right, so this is 146, 126, 106.
Yeah. Look, in an ideal world, I would, I would build a 195-foot tower. And we understand we can't always do that, and it's not appropriate to always do that. So I think we've picked a good spot at the Salt Dome where it's set back, the lack of homes. And that's why we had our ears on the 22nd, and we heard the folks, the residents in the lake community. We're just presenting options. There's no decisions made. It's just options so we can have an open dialogue about this project, obviously.
Right.
But we think the Salt Dome is the most appropriate location for a site, and that's why we're here tonight.
Brian?
Okay, questions from the board?
Well, I would, my observation is that unless others have different opinions, it sounds like there's no reason to continue to consider the site at the highway yard. And if we are in agreement on that now and limiting our exploration to the Salt Dome, that might answer already a number of questions that might come up in the public when we open it up to the public. So I don't know if there's any interest in some expression on that count right now, or we want to wait.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Dan.
And I agree as well.
That's a majority.
Now, I mean,
Was that
obviously-
you, Jen, or Jane?
No, that was Jane saying that's a majority. You know, I
Okay.
still have some questions about the location here. I know we're just kind of, poking around and trying to get a sense of what would work. I know when Ray was last here on the 22nd, we were talking about, could they even make it past being in a historic district and some of those requirements too. So I still have those questions, but I think that's for a different part of the process here.
Oh, definitely. I think that, we've gone extensively through this, and the last time that
Yep.
Ray presented,
Yep.
it was 2 times. So I was just calling that was the majority, because I feel like that's a kind of a nice ending point to the conversation for now, if that's the majority. And so I agree with you. I have a lot of questions myself, and I think the public will be bringing forth a lot of questions that I'm looking forward to hearing and considering. But for now, I feel comfortable going with the majority. And thank you, Ray, for your time and your presentation this evening.
My pleasure. I would ask, on the Zoom call this evening is Manny Vicente, who's the owner of Homeland Towers, and I know he would like to speak
Hi,
briefly.
Hi, Manny.
I think Ms. Donahue or maybe Mr. Smith might need to unmute him, possibly.
That would be great. He lives right here in town in Golden's Bridge.
Yep, I'm looking for him now. Mhm.
Yeah, the only other thing, Ray, that I mean, I'd like to see more data around the coverage. I know, again, I'm basing this on a test I did today myself, where I had a couple of sections, small sections of 35 where I dropped a call. But again, to the point about, do this during rush hour, it's probably going to be a different experience. So I'd like to see more data on that.
That was, you were also using AT&T, right?
Correct, which AT&T has improved ever since they put in their equipment on the Town Park Tower in January. That has improved my service tremendously. Like I said, I was able to carry a conversation from Cross River all the way to Ridgefield without a problem, and into Connecticut. And coming back, it was when I had, there were a couple of spots where I lost the call.
So Ray, is Manny on a cell phone? Do you have any idea if he called in or?
I believe
He's waving. He has himself listed as Homeland, I think.
Yes.
Okay, let me go to Homeland.
Yep.
Okay, I found you, Manny. I'm asking you to unmute. There you go.
Thank you. So I just wanted to add a few things to what Ray said, and I think he did a great job kind of going over the history of how we got coverage in Lewisboro. Hasn't been easy, but I think we're in a much better place today than we were 20 years ago, where we only had one site and very little coverage. I wanted to also explain that the carriers all do use 3 different frequencies. And the reason why they do that is basically the higher frequencies allow for much better quality, better bandwidth, and better better capabilities for the future and today. Some of the apps that we're using and are being developed are very complicated and require that better quality. So that's one of the reasons why they use 3 different frequencies. And they're slightly different frequencies, but they essentially are a higher frequency, a mid-range frequency, and a lower frequency. The lower frequencies propagate much better, and the signal travels much better. I also wanted to state that, you know, every time you make a call and drive around, you may have a slightly different experience and result. That's why reliable coverage is what the carrier is designed for. For example, moisture affects signal. Rain, bad weather will affect signal. Humidity will affect signal. Tree cover, leaves will affect signal. So you have changes in the environment that are going on that will affect the signal strength and your ability to hold a call or make a call. You also have usage that will affect signal. So for example, what's interesting when I look at the data around schools, for example, when schools are in session, the usage is tremendous, and it actually sucks up the coverage because the usage is so great. When the school is out of session on weekends or during the summer, the coverage is much better because that usage isn't draining the network. So there's a lot of different things that affect signal strength and coverage. So it's not static. It's very much fluid. And as we develop better technologies, better apps, we need that quality. And that's one of the reasons why Verizon and the carriers are looking to add facilities, because they need to. Our ability on the infrastructure side to keep up with the technology isn't very good. The technology advancements far outpace our ability to keep up with them on the infrastructure side. And that's going to probably continue. So I just wanted to give some perspective. There was a lot of questions about, you know, how coverage works and why don't I always have the same experience? Why does it shows on a map I should have coverage, but I didn't hold the call there, but I held the call there. Those are the reasons. This isn't, you know, static in any way. So I hope that helps a lot. And I also want to make a very important point for the town board. I know these are always very difficult decisions, but we're not speculators. We're charged in this case by Verizon to develop a site in this area. We've looked at it for the past 4 years, and our company, you know, we like to site on municipal property wherever possible. 60% of our sites on municipal property because we think that's just a smart thing to do. Having that revenue go back into the tax base, having the control in the hands of the municipality, the public safety benefits, et cetera. It just, when you can do it, when it works, it's a better option. In this particular case, we feel strongly that the Salt Dome objectively is going to be the best site. Now, should the town, after reviewing the information, and we'll do our best to get you everything we can, should the town decide not to enter in a lease agreement with us, the issue doesn't go away. The problem doesn't go away. We will then be going to private properties to develop a piece of infrastructure. So I want to make sure everybody understands that, because that's a very important point here. We think that objectively this is the best location from a technical perspective. It's hard to find a property that's far away from residences in a residential area. If you look at a map, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about for our town. And this site is fairly well hidden. It isn't close to a large number of residences. It is on municipal property. And our alternative, should we not be able to lease and develop the site, would be a private location. And I can tell you that a private location will be closer to more residences and probably much more visible as well. So I think that's important for the town board to understand and the public to understand. Now, it's our job to give you all the information we can, answer your questions, and to the degree we can, the questions from the public. But these are facts. These are not made up things. And the issue won't go away if we're not able to work with the town on this particular project. And I think I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that.
Thanks, Manny.
Thank you, Manny. I have a question on the, I know in the beginning of Ray's presentation, he mentioned the relocation of the tower within the Salt Dome property. And I know we had a couple email exchanges on that. So the south, I guess it'd be the southeastern corner to the left of the entrance. Is that, I know Peter Rippinger would probably have to move things around to support his operations. But is that not a possible location? Even if we did like an L shape like we did with LVAC, an L-shaped footprint?
And just speaking with Peter in the emails back and forth, and I think, Tony, you may have been on some of them. I think that area is actively used for operations. And I think there may be some third-party agreement the town may have. I can't speak for that completely, but where someone has rights also to that area. So it was just an area that we discussed with the town, and that Peter felt strongly that the initial location in the back corner, set further back from the road, was the best location. And we think so as well. We think it's a good spot back there.
Right.
Look, and it's I would be honest with you, it's more expensive for us to build it back there. If I could come into the parking lot and not have to put a road or do any grading and put a tower foundation in, I would save considerable money.
Right.
In this case, that's not the case. We're looking at the back corner. It's more money for us, but we think it's the best location visually and siting for the tower, and keeping out of the town's operations, obviously, and
Right.
keeping out of the wetlands.
Because I know today there's an asphalt pile there. I think that was depicted in your drawing. And so if moving that pile, I know Peter had a concern with trucks turning and third parties that use, bring in their equipment, and they're moving the equipment around, they need the room. But I just wanted to exhaust that option to see if, is it still an option to consider rather than up top in the back of the Salt Dome?
I think, in fact, we've got a very strong point of view from our highway superintendent that we should not do that alternative. Partially because of practicality and working at that site when they're working there, getting salt and all that kind of thing.
And if I can add to that, Tony, if I can add a few things. First, we also have to respect the wetland setback there. And
Right.
that really affects our ability to site in different locations, and we're very, very limited. The other thing, in talking with the town engineer, is a lot of that soil there, where the current sort of wood pile is, and et cetera, has been filled, and it's a lot of biologicals. So we may not be able to effectively build the foundation there as well. So there's some concerns to that. But I think the primary concern was from the highway department is that that's an area that's actively used and they don't have an alternative. But I will also bring up something that Dan had mentioned about what we can do to improve the facility and the site as it currently exists. And in talking with the town engineer, we think that we can potentially create some curbing along the area of the wetland that could be beneficial to prevent any sediment salt, et cetera, from leaving the property onto the wetland. So that's something, you know, Dan had asked us to see what we can do to actually make improvements there, and we heard them, and we started that discussion. So I think there's some, and we haven't vetted it fully, but I think there's some opportunities there to improve the facility and its impact on the adjacent wetland.
That could make a lot of sense because our record is not absolutely pure as driven snow in that area.
I wanted to thank Tony for bringing that up, that separate entrance. I think that may be a concern that was raised. And so I appreciate the opportunity to talk more about it, but I also want to assert that I heard Supervisor Parsons invoke our superintendent of highway, Peter Rippinger. And I think that, you know, if he thinks it doesn't make sense to do that southeast entrance, I would really trust his judgment there. And I look forward to hearing further about the improvements, that the opportunities for improvement adjacent to the wetland. That's always really interesting to me.
If there are no further comments from the town board at the moment, remembering we will have a lot of other opportunities to ask questions,
Right.
I would like to.
Mid-sentence, but that's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. I was just mid-sentence. I guess I was just kind of trailing
Oh,
off.
okay. Sorry. I thought you'd stopped.
No, I just wanted to note it. I think I had said what I had said, but yeah, we'll have lots more opportunity to ask questions. So I just thought that I would put some of my thoughts out there, since you and Dan and Tony had said a lot of things. So I just thought that I would go ahead and put some stuff out there as well. I hope it was helpful.
Okay. I would like to do. All right. The agenda says I'm going to approve claims next. So I'd like to make a motion to approve claims. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Could I'd now like to propose we begin a second public comment period devoted to the cell tower.
Peter, there's one item, discussion of energy credit purchase agreement.
Oh, heck, I'm sorry. Thank you. I dodged down. All right. Let's do the energy credit purchase agreement. Dan, do you want to summarize what this is? It's basically a way we've been discussing for some time how we can be green and
Somebody has to
reduce.
unmute Dan.
Yeah.
What?
Janet, can you
He's
unmute?
muted.
He needs to be, unmuted. He probably requested. There he is.
He's now
Thank you.
unmuted.
Yeah, I muted
you go.
myself. There was
There's your voice.
some
We've been
delay.
discussing for some time how we can be greener and at the same time decrease our electric bills. This is a way of the town decreasing its electric bills. And at our larger points of consumption. Basically, it's a deal whereby we sign up for 25 years. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, to buy power from Lodestar.
By
He's correcting
credit.
us.
By credits. Good.
Oh, buy credits from Lodestar. And well, you go on then.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't blame you for the slip of the tongue, because that's the intuitive thing to say we're buying power, but it's this strange system the state has set up to increase participation in these renewable energy projects and spread the benefits around. And our residents have actually been signing up to these projects now for a few months now. But we're lucky that the projects also have allocations, larger allocations that they call anchor subscribers. And those are larger accounts, as you said, and they have to go through a separate agreement process. And again, that's part of the way the state regulations work around this, and as with respect to those anchor subscribers. But the deal is basically the same, where we get credits that come onto the bill, which are basically like a credit you would have if you like overpaid your bill or something. You know, you pay less on your bill. And if the example was, say, you got $100 credit on your bill, then you have to pay for those credits, but you're paying at a discount. So if you get a 10% discount on the credits, you're paying $90 for the $100 benefit. You're netting out a $10 and a 10%.
In your pocket.
Right. So that's what we're looking to do on all the larger accounts for the town. And we're going to have a number of thousands of dollars of savings a year by doing this. And we're helping to put more clean energy on the grid.
I believe it's quite honestly, the town can ill afford to pass up an opportunity to reduce its costs. And I think we should grab hold of this one. The 25-year guarantee applies to 83% of our current consumption. Right, Dan?
Yeah, and the point of the 83% is just like when the residents sign up, they don't sign you up for 100% of your capacity because they don't want it to pop over with the pluses and minuses of the production of the unit, because you basically just kind of like lose those credits. So they sign you up for something that's less than your, you know, as much as possible within their calculations, so they know you're going to get the maximum credits, and we're not going to just lose some of those credits. So it ends up being about 83% of our total usage. So we're going to save the 10% against that 83%. So it's not going to be 10% on our whole bill, it'll be 10% on 80%. So we'll save, 7-8% on the total electric bill.
I'd like to propose. I don't. I want somebody else to propose. Dan,
yeah. And
would you like to
point out
propose that I am allowed to sign this agreement?
I will do that, and just point out that Anthony, you've reviewed this. You didn't say anything else in there that we should take note of in terms of what the meaning of this thing might be.
Was off. Yes, I reviewed it, and I had no edits or changes to the version that we're looking at tonight.
Okay. So with that,
do we have a second for Dan?
Well, I would propose that we authorize the supervisor to sign the solar credits agreement as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, I can now go to the public comment period number 2, which is limited to a discussion of the cell tower. Does anybody wish to speak?
They do, Peter. And again, I will remind everyone to state your name, hamlet that you live in. You're allotted 2 minutes. I'll give you a 30-second warning. And I'm asking now Jimbo to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Jim.
Hi, this is Jim from O'Connor from Vista, New York. I received today in the mail from the town of Lewisboro office of the supervisor from Peter H. Parsons, supervisor, regarding the community solar and sustainable Westchester. I just want to say, I think this is a phenomenal idea. I really like the idea about this. Anywhere we could save money and go green, I'm all for it. But I do have a concern. I did a little research and I went on the website to Sustainable Westchester Inc., 55 Maple Avenue, Mount Kisco, New York. And going on the website, I went to Form 990, Return of Organization Exempt from Income Tax for 2018. Page 8 of 32, many prominent people throughout Westchester are listed. I would say on listing the names and titles from 12 to 14, They list their billable hours averaging 3 hours. Line 13, Robert Elliott, Executive Director, 20 hours billable for $75,000 a year. Line 14, Daniel Welsh, Program Director, 40 hours, $100,000 and expenses of $14,000 plus. According to the website, Mr. Walsh states he's a member of the Lewisboro Town Board since 2008, core team member of Sustainable Westchester since 2009, and a salaried employee of Sustainable Westchester for 2016. He states the duties and responsibilities, business operations and programs, development for Westchester Power and New York State First Community programs. Now, I look at the timeline and it worries me. I like to have the attorney look into this or give me a quick answer. Is this ethical? Is there a conflict of interest? Is it a quid pro quo? Can the town be sued
Jim,
for
we have
possible
to cut
ethics
you off.
violations?
Okay,
Official town of Lewisboro letterhead makes no mention of this. Possibly the town board members
okay.
benefit from
Thank you,
this
Jim. I'm sorry, I
compliance.
have to
Thank you.
mute you. Next, we have Simone's. I will ask Simone's iPad to unmute. Can you hear me, Simone? Simone, can you hear me? All right, I'll try to come back to Simone. Now we have John Guzmano. I'm asking you to unmute, John. John, can you hear me?
I think he's muted.
Okay,
himself.
there we go.
There you go. Okay.
Sorry,
Okay,
had my laptop muted.
okay, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, number one, I am glad to hear that you are, and this is an assumption on my part, that we are not considering the highway department location. I was on the planning board for 10 years and we looked at the Salt Dome, the highway location, and among other areas with Homeland. There are too many issues there at the lakeside view where it is totally visible, and there are other environmental issues which I don't need to get into now because we don't want to open that can of worms, but coverage is certainly needed. And I should look at AT&T because whoever was Ted, you were running around AT&T. I have Verizon, and depending on the time of the year and the weather, I cannot get coverage at my house, and I live right on the lake. I'm not going to take up a lot more time. That's pretty much my opinion. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good job.
Now I'm asking Andrew Campanelli. Andrew, I'm asking you to unmute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you. My name is Andrew Campanelli. I'm an attorney. My office is at 1757 Merrick Avenue, Suite 204, Merrick, New York. I'm here tonight representing approximately 80 homeowners and constituents of yours. I'm aware of your 2-minute rule. Unfortunately, both the board and myself are constrained by federal law. I'm required to proffer substantial evidence to rebut some of the information that was provided by the applicant tonight. So I'm going to ask you to relax that 2-minute rule and afford me approximately 8 minutes. And I may go less than that. And I submit to the board, it's probably a smart thing to do because 1, the law requires it, and 2, if you give me 8 minutes, hopefully at least 40 or 50 of my clients won't use their 2 minutes. I can go instead. So I happen to agree with the applicant that the Salt Dome location appears to be less intrusive than the DPW location. It's difficult for me to make a more comprehensive analysis because this evening is the first time I saw the alleged propagation maps. I'm constrained to point out that the propagation maps are not supported with any data. I understand the board member took some anecdotal samples by driving through town, but I respectfully submit that, of course, the goal should not be to prevent all cell towers and prevent coverage in the town. The goal should be to enforce your smart planning provisions, including but not limited to section 220-41.1 of your code. And the only way you can do that is to get hard data. If they're claiming they have a gap in coverage, ask them for drive test results. If they're claiming they have a capacity deficiency, ask them for drop call records. And the reason is, if and only if the board is provided with that data, can you figure out if this is a good location for the tower? At first blush, it appears to be a good location, but I can't verify that yet. And if it's not a good location and you grant it, two things are going to happen. Number one, whatever the height of the tower is, it's going to be taller. If you grant approval for a 130, it's going to be 146 or 150 because under the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act of 2012, Homeland, once it's built, will be able to increase the height by 20 feet, exempt from your zoning laws, and you can't stop them. The other thing that's going to happen is they're probably going to come back for another tower because the first one didn't cover the gaps in service. So I'm not saying the town has perfect coverage. It sounds like there are coverage issues. All I'm saying is the town must require this applicant to give the proper data to enable you to make an informed choice. That's all. In similar fashion, if they're going to conduct a balloon test, which I recommend highly, I respectfully request that this record keep open so that when the residents get to see the balloon test, they're then afforded an opportunity to be heard. Again, this is also covered under the First Amendment right to petition government for the redress of grievances. And I handle these cases across the entire United States. So I've got a pretty good background on this. Finally, I would ask and impose upon the board not to be led into any situation within which you're asked to conduct what's called a Monroe balancing test. If and to the extent your code requires any type of zoning approval, I respectfully submit that this board should ensure that whatever your choice is, that the application be submitted to whatever appropriate boards should be gone to, whether it's the planning board, the ZBA, the wetlands board, whatever it may be. You have smart planning provisions in your code. They're there for a reason. They're there to protect your town and your constituents. And I respectfully submit that this board should not circumvent those limitations. I can tell you from what I've seen, the submissions by the applicant are defective. The visual impact photographs are defective because they don't include images taken from the nearby residences. If they do that for any other site, it's going to be, quite frankly, the horror show. And the propagation maps have no verifying data. There isn't a federal or state court in the country that will accept those things as probative evidence. So I would submit to the board that you have to ask them for the probative evidence. So with that, I respectfully request that this public hearing be kept open.
It's not a public hearing.
This is not a public hearing? What is it then? Because
No, this is a town attorney speaking just quickly. This is not yet even close to the stage of a public hearing. Just so you're aware, there will be an actual public hearing regardless of the process in which board's hearing it. If there are other boards involved, there will probably be multiple public hearings, but this is not a public hearing this evening. This is just an introduction and proposal by the cell tower.
I respect that, Mr. Molay. The reason I brought up the Monroe test is it's not my first rodeo. It's not my first time I've been up against Homeland Towers or their principal. And my fear is that when they ask someone, a town board, to adopt the Monroe test, they circumvent all of the permit requirements. There are no public hearings. And this would be the only time that the public would be heard.
If there is a Monroe test, there would be a public hearing.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
With that, I will. I appreciate the board's affording me somewhat more time, and thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Next up, we have Nicholas Fogoli. I'm asking you to unmute.
Evening, everyone. Thanks so much for the time. Much appreciated. I would like some clarity. I did hear one of the town council folk mention that there was a majority opinion that the Salt Dome and Truesdale Lake would no longer be. Is that a binding vote, or is that just a show of what the interest was? Is there anything binding on that?
A show at this stage.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm sorry, I should introduce myself first. I'm the president of the Truesdale Lake Property Owners Association. We run 150 homes plus on the lake, along with TEA, Truesdale Estate Associates. At our annual meeting last week, the entire membership unanimously voted to oppose a tower on our lakeshore. I am very glad to hear during the presentations and during the council person's comments that seems no longer to be a place that you feel is appropriate for it. We would obviously completely agree. I am a little upset. I had all these wonderful notes and I don't think they're necessary anymore. So thanks for the hour and a half I wasted on writing all that up. So thanks
It's
much.
good for you.
Welcome
Yeah,
to our world.
and I did it longhand. So that's even more impressive. So I just want to say from our association, we obviously oppose it in every, I looked on the tax parcel map and in that location, it would be approximately 700 plus homes that would have visual sight of that tower in that location. Obviously, from our perspective, being on the water, boating, biking, it would be quite a poor aesthetic addition to our bucolic lake. So again, appreciate you folks looking in a different direction. We will want to stay on top of what's going on as things move forward to make sure that it continues that way. And the bunch of our members that did hire the attorney that just spoke a moment ago, we hope, as we said, that as we move forward, we don't have to pay them anymore. So just want to say thank you and good night.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Now I call on the Bowers. I'm asking them to unmute.
Okay, so hi, we're Allison and Callie from Echo Farm, obviously, and was wondering if we could each have 2 minutes just in case. I don't think we'll need them, just to start. Okay, so anyways, so obviously the cell tower is super a touchy subject for us because this is the proposed cell tower is going on the same land that our horses have been grazing on for over half of a century. And it's obviously super upsetting to find out that the salt dome is now the only option that's really being investigated heavily. And now also just finding out that it could be 20 feet taller than expected. Looking at the maps, it looked like there was some overlap in the coverage, and that was super frustrating, especially because when this first came up, we were talking about filling a hole on 35, which I did not see on the maps. I'm also just wondering if it's really worth it to just completely wreck the two most historical farms in town and just wreck the whole viewscape and way that this working farm has been functioning for the past century. Also saying that it won't be visible, that is totally impossible because it's about to just wreck the heart of the town, and it's heartbreaking. So
it is. Okay, I'm Callie Bauer from Echo Farm. I'm probably, I mean, there are probably other people on here, but I am probably one of the few people who was born and raised in this town. I grew up at Echo Farm, raised my kids here. It will affect a lot of people. We will go around and we will get an attorney if we have to, if that's what it takes. But it's really shocking to me that all of a sudden tonight, the tower is going from 130 to 146 feet, and everyone thinks that that is totally acceptable. I really hope that the people that are want to preserve green space come out and help us here, because currently our horses are in this open field. They want to do this property because it is open. There is no trees to take down. It is an easy property to put a tower up on. We had a verbal agreement we could graze our horses here. We thought that that was forever. Apparently that doesn't mean anything. But at this point, we really want to have people come forward and talk about preserving open land and open space. It's 30 acres. It's the center of Lewisboro right now. To put a cell tower on it, I think is a real atrocity. I'm not saying, I don't think it should be anywhere in the hamlet, the historic hamlet of South Salem. This barn is probably one of the oldest working farms in South Salem. Anyhow, I really hope other people come forward and we can find another alternative. I understand that Peter says there are no other alternatives. I am willing to do some legwork. If we can all put together some, thought process to this and maybe come up with another alternative. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm asking Lucille Munns to unmute.
Hi there.
Hi, there you go.
Hi. All right, good evening, everyone. Mr. Parsons, Town Board, thank you for allowing me to speak. Very quickly, first, I would like Homeland Towers to do a little more homework. What if they don't get their tower at the Hammond Museum? What would it look like? What would the propagation maps look like then? How is it going to impact what we're going to have next? 2, I would like to see a propagation map of mountain lakes, because I've worked for Westchester County for 20 years, and I can tell you the Board of Legislators can pretty much do anything they want. If there's an existing tower, they could work out an agreement, get money, and these fabulous cell tower service for everyone. So there you have that. Echo Lake and the salt tower, Echo Farms, salt. Part of that becomes the zoning and planning process. So we need to look at all locations and all alternatives, but the information needs to be developed succinctly, and we need to have all that information in front of us. I don't want to throw my neighbor under the bus because I don't want it at my Lake Truesdale home. I live at 26 Hoyt Street, South Salem, on Lake Truesdale, and I'd rather it be in the place that it meets the needs of most people. And having all that information, we can do that. Thank you. That's what I got.
Thank you, Lucille. Next, I ask Simone Petromelis to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I had my hand raised in the first public comment, so I'm just going to say what I wanted then. I sent a letter, and other than some discourse with Tony, and I thank him, I've received no response from the board. Council Member Crimmins, you made the statement that you plan to raise your children in a heterogeneous and urban environment. You never imagined yourself back here in the white supremacist environment from which you fled. You agreed that lots of racist harm has been perpetuated here, especially in the schools, and that racism experts need to be hired. Further, you stated you've reached out to the school superintendent regarding this dire matter over the course of your tenure, and that you're afraid of the police. I don't know if you've even lived here 5 years, but when you ran for office, you said this was a wonderful town. When I've addressed this to the board, I've gotten no response. Why is the board not being transparent and are speaking out to our town's residents? I believe they have a right to have this addressed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Simone. Next up is Jonathan Frogers. I'll ask you to unmute, Jonathan.
How did I get to follow that? I'm not sure I understood that.
Okay.
Anyway,
It was quite easy to understand, Jonathan.
I'm not here to address that. Nick Fagioli, our TLPOA president, asked the board if this was a binding decision not to put the tower on Truesdale Lake or a show. And Peter, you said for now it's just a show. When will we be assured that the tower won't be put in any visible part over Truesdale Lake?
As we move forward, when we have to take that decision, which is not yet, and it might be rather stupid of us to cut off options before we know what those options are worth.
So there's a possibility that it still might be put over Truesdale Lake.
Yes.
Okay, in that case, I'll read my letter. To the Town of Lewisboro Board regarding the proposed cell tower to be put up at Town Hall Town Dump location, I'm writing to express my most strenuous opposition. Such a location for the tower would have it looming in the view over Truesdale Lake. My house is located on the west side of the lake, where the tower's eastern location would place it in my direct view at all times. I bought our home on Truesdale Lake for the spectacular view over the lake. I've not only cherished this view for 30 years, I've worked my entire adult life to pay for this home and this view. If this tower goes up, I will see it from my kitchen, my bedroom, my dining room, my bathroom, my deck on my house, the patio by my lake. I will see it from my entire property. If this tower goes up in this location, it will break my heart every day, and I will not be alone. The people on and around Truesdale Lake live here for the rustic beauty of the lake. We work hard to maintain and preserve it. We share a love and deep appreciation for the nature and beauty, specifically the unique nature and beauty of Truesdale Lake. I'm outraged that the town board could possibly destroy this beauty we cherish. Can you really be so unconcerned for the citizens you supposedly serve? What right does the town have to destroy the beauty of Truesdale, a jewel that for most of us who live on it is the centerpiece of our life, socially, recreationally, and especially aesthetically? I join my neighbors' efforts to defeat this proposed tower in any way I can. Words can hardly express my disappointment. I'm forced to do so, but if you come to mind, shame on you, and how dare you do this? It's how I feel. Don't put it up. The fact that you're even considering it, I think bodes ill that you have our best interests in mind.
Thank you, John. If you could send that letter to me so I can include it in the minutes.
It's been sent. Thank you.
To townclerk@lewisboro.gov.com.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify. So we had a discussion earlier, early on about the preferred location. We did say the preferred location is the Salt Dome and not
Right.
the W site.
But we didn't, as far as I know, take a firm decision. We just.
Yeah, a preferred location means nothing when all of a sudden we see it over Truesdale Lake, with all due respect.
Okay.
I don't think that was a formal decision. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
It's not a decision. It's not a decision at all, which is the problem.
Jonathan, yes, but what you got was a sense of the board.
So now I'm asking Carol Cernak if she could unmute, please.
Hi, this is Carol Cernak. My husband and I, Bruce, have lived and caretake and manage Farview Farm for the last 30 years. I'd just like to point out that the Homeland Towers is a for-profit business. They're salespeople and they're very good at what they do. Farview Farm and Echo Farm have been in preservation and working. Farview since the 1940s, Echo Farm since the 1950s, by the same families who have owned it during that entire time. The town of Lewisboro entered into a verbal handshake with Al Ridgway in the 70s to acquire property to install the Salt Dome, not for any other purpose. The view shed that Homeland Towers has given us is, I believe, without leaves. It's in the leafed out period. There's no studies on the long-term health risks. I have been in contact with New York State Agriculture and Market regarding the preservation and conservation of enrolled farms for preservation and open space. I would also like to know who is the third-party operator and what does the contract look like at the Salt Dome property. I believe it's a lumber processing place. It's ironic that the town of Lewisboro on their website has Echo Farm and Farview Farm on their webpage representing the town of Lewisboro. And how dare you propose to put a cell tower, a potentially 150-foot cell tower in between both properties.
Okay, Carol, I'm sorry, but your time is up. Thank you for your comments. Now I'm asking Ellen to unmute.
How'd I do?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Ellen.
Okay, I'll turn my camera on too. Hi, I'm Ellen Taus. I'm an owner of a property on Truesdale Lake for the last 18 years. And I want to voice my support for the comments made just before me and by Lucille, by Jonathan, by the two farm owners. I think we have a very unique place here in this corner of Westchester, and it behooves us to get much more information about possible alternatives before we make any kind of decision. Just because these are the two alternatives that the company that is looking to make the most profits building their tower came to us with, we shouldn't be satisfied with only these alternatives. We need lots more information, lots more studies, and we certainly don't want to destroy the one thing that we can never replace, which is the unique nature and views around Lake Truesdale. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
Okay. Next, I'm asking Janet Harcum to unmute. Janet? I'll ask.
Hello, hi.
Okay.
Hi. I unmuted, you muted. I'm Janet Harcum. I am on the, I'm an advisor on the Lewisboro Town Sustainability Committee. I am speaking up tonight because I think it's, you can hear on all sides, Lake Truesdale at Echo Farm View, Farview, Farm View. Cell tower is incredibly controversial, and land use is an important aspect of any town, but particularly for Lewisboro, where people are attracted to the area by its nature, its beauty, its lakes, its countryside. And the view shed is absolutely going to be destroyed. Echo Farm is, you know, a historic place, so is Farview Farm. It's very short-sighted to think that if there aren't public safety issues associated with the cell tower, that the cell tower should be seriously considered as an extra. I also very much do not appreciate Miss Manny's comment about how, well, if it's not going to happen at the Salt Dome, we've identified it as the best place for the Salt Dome, and we're going to go to the public and we are going to put that tower up. If you don't, you know, we're going to have a private place to put the tower off. We aren't going to have a tower unless you vote for the tower. And the assumption that the tower will go up is very, very arrogant and not really appropriate in my mind. I feel like you have many questions. The public has many, should have much ability to comment on this, and that it's a veiled threat in some bizarre way that this cell tower is going to go up on the private property or on a public property. 30 seconds left. So I would strongly agree that on all sides of the aisle, that land use, public view shed, what attracts people to Lewisboro in the first place, preserving farmland, which is decreasing by the day. We want to preserve those in their best possible use. So no to the cell tower.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Now I'm asking it says Gray. I'm assuming it's Lauren Gray.
That is correct.
Okay.
So I would like to say, I think it's interesting we're talking about clean energy tonight when we're having, when we're talking about destroying land over by the Salt Dome, which has already had environmental problems. I think the town needs to be more transparent about how this tower came about. I feel nobody would have known about it if I happened to listen to a board meeting one night to find out how the not being funded for June, July, and August. I think we need to stop, take a breath, and get an antenna advisory committee put together with 5 qualified people with the credentials to talk about technology. The last time a study was done here and written up was 2016. It's long overdue. Technology changes every 18 months. We should have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and a 20-year plan, because God knows in 10 years, maybe cell phone towers won't exist. As far as the emergencies on Route 35, I believe Homeland Towers already said that they could handle that with a DOS node. I also find it interesting that were hired Homeland Towers with somebody who owns it, who lives in our hamlet. And I consider that a conflict of interest. And whether you put it at Lake Truesdale or the Salt Dome, if you're thinking of doing that, you're also destroying the renovated library. If it's at the Salt Dome, everybody going to story time in the children's room will be looking at a tower. We've already destroyed Route 35, seeing towers coming home from 684 at LVAC, and seeing it when we leave our homes at Lake Truesdale, going down 35, seeing it over the ridge, that stunning thing. Nobody even made an attempt to cover it with foliage. I think we need to do a better job. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Next, I invite Stephanie Tremaine to unmute, please. Stephanie Tremaine. I hear you, Stephanie. Hello? Stephanie? Okay, we'll try again later. Right now, I invite Lou Tafra to unmute.
Can't seem to be able to do it.
Yep,
okay.
we hear you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Louis Taffer, I reside at 3 Main Street. I have my office at 96 Spring Street. First, I note that Mr. Vergati from Homeland Towers indicated that they are not considering the site behind the townhouse at this point, and they are focusing on the Salt Dome. So I think that Peter Parsons speaking to the possibility of it still being there is a bit of a hollow threat to get people to be concerned that it may be there when clearly it's not even Homeland's intention to put the tower there. Next, I noted that Mr. Campanelli addressed certain issues with respect to the coverage maps that were very much more in detail than mine. But just from my inexperienced and not particularly knowledgeable view of the maps that were put up by Mr. Vergati, I must say that I did not find particularly there being that much additional coverage by the addition of this tower at the South Dome site from what the coverage is right now. He spoke in terms of the 2100 bandwidth, and that really addressing issues like video and photographs and more things that you can carry than the bandwidth just for telephone calls. It strikes me that a lot of this purpose is to get coverage on roads while people are driving their cars, particularly on Route 35. I don't know why we want to encourage people to be using their cell phones while they're driving on Route 35 or any other road in town, nor should we want them to be certainly looking at videos or anything addition that can be added to that. I'm not clear what is gained in any substantial way by this tower. I also said, I think Mr. Vincenti's statement about looking to private property is a bit of an empty threat because he would have to go through a much more rigorous approval process.
Lou, I hate to cut you off, but your 2 minutes is up.
Board. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Lou. Now I invite Dean to unmute. You there, Dean? Dean, there you go.
Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted. hold on.
Actually, he just muted again.
Yeah. Dean, are you there? Oh. I'm asking you to unmute.
How about now?
There you go. Yep. You're good.
Okay. Okay, press okay, okay. I just wanted to reiterate first, I want to strongly reiterate what Lauren and Janet said. And the board should take notice that when my good friend Janet and I agree on something, maybe it's worth listening to. Well, whatever Janet said goes 100% for me. My only disagreement was what Homeland Tower said. I would not take it as a veiled threat. I took it as a threat when I heard it the first time. So that's one thing. I'm glad, though, that Mr. Campanella came on the phone and Lou and Homeland Towers with their threats. I feel a bit more comfortable criticizing them now. I felt a little bit bad because Manny lives in town and we sure all love everything that these guys do. However, when I think about it, by the way, full disclosure, because of bad internet service, I got kicked off this meeting. I'm only on because I've tethered back on my cell phone. So I understand the value of cell service. But to go forward, first thing is this, without getting back into ugly situations, fact of the matter is that we've lost a qualified leader of the Tenant Advisory Board. So my question would be, can't we get someone else qualified to advise the board? We go forward. There are a lot of traps here when none of us are close to being experts. I did realize that the maps were not sufficient, but I don't know I'm not qualified in any way to be comparing the maps. Maybe even for a short-term basis, the town could retain a qualified consultant to take the place that we had on the board, just to lead whatever citizens want to volunteer for the board. I don't think we have too many wireless engineers around. So maybe before they move forward and get hoodwinked into something or just not understand things fully, we get a qualified professional. The other thing I want to say is that it's nice, it's good business practice to have everything on town property. But last meeting or 2 meetings ago, Ted admitted to me that he did not look at anything other than town-owned properties. I understand from Homeland Towers' circumstance or from their perspective, it might be good to look at just town-owned properties because it sort of helps out. But I'm not sure it really helps out otherwise for what is the best choice. So maybe look at some other ones. Also,
Okay.
they have.
Dean, I hate to cut you off, but your
I couldn't see
time
you, I'm
is up.
sorry. For one last point, if
I hit the little.
Can I lean on the board for one last point in 10 more seconds? I just want to say, you could also look and see there are other competition of Homeland. What harm would it be to get a competitive bid? Have somebody come in and give their opinion. There are plenty of other companies. I'll help you find one if you'd like. That was it.
All right, Dean. Thanks so much.
All right, Janet, I just couldn't see you on the screen.
That's okay.
Bye.
Bye. So now I am asking AMC to unmute.
Hi, everyone. My name is Meek McLean. My husband is AMC, Alan Michael Carpentry. We live on Gilbert Street in the Lake Truesdale neighborhood. Both my husband and myself own and run a local business in the Lewisboro town. So both of us have a separate business in town and are really invested in the community. I'm really glad I joined tonight. I'm very curious to hear more. I think everybody's kind of wanting more from the studies. Is there really a need to put a cell tower? I feel for the farms that are up closer to 35. And I'm questioning, further research and why is there actually a need for this? And why do we need to be more connected? And do we need to be watching videos on 35? But my sentiments are similar to a lot of these in the area who have spoken tonight. If there is a need for the cell phone tower, people come from all over town and surrounding towns to walk the Lake Truesdale neighborhood. Everyone enjoys the lake. It's not like we're a community who's all kind of stuck in our houses. We're a really active community and spend a lot of time on the lake and, just activities around the lake, and this cell phone tower would affect so many of us. I think Nick mentioned around 700 people would be able to see the cell phone tower. So I just want to reiterate that I'm opposed to the cell phone tower in the Lake Truesdale neighborhood. And I would like to hear further research about what is actually the need for a cell phone tower. That's it. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you so much. Now I invite Susan Enos to unmute. Susan?
Unmute. There we go.
There you
Can hear
are.
me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you. Janet, first, I have a question for you. In 4 days last week, I received 60 letters from Truesdale residents, also South Salem residents, mostly opposing the cell towers, but commenting on the cell towers. And can I send them all to you?
Sure.
Good. Wonderful. Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
With them all. Yeah. Okay. My other comment is to the board. There are 5 very well-meaning people who want to do the best thing for the town of Lewisboro and for South Salem. And I guess my concern is I have lived in South Salem. I've been gone a little bit of time, but for 70 years plus. I moved here when I was 2. I love South Salem. I love the hamlet. I love the whole feel of our town that everybody expresses so eloquently I couldn't even come close to. But I just wonder why we're in a hurry to make this decision. We're, this Monroe balancing test, whatever that is, seems to bypass planning and zoning. Why do we need to do that? Why can't we take some time, have more people look at this? I know we need cell service. I happen to have Verizon. I get good service, but I know other people don't, and it's very important. But I just think we're doing this quickly and in a hurry, and I just feel very badly about that. And I just ask the board to take your time. So thank you very much. I'm done.
All right, thank you, Susan. Now I'm asking Stephanie Tremaine. I've asked you to unmute. Stephanie Tremaine.
You go twice, right?
Well, you go twice.
See.
This is the second time I've asked her. So Stephanie, are you unmuted? Okay, well, that appears to be all of the public comment hands that are raised here that I can see. Supervisor?
He's on mute.
He's muted.
He needs
I'm
unmuting.
going to run down the hall and call him to request to be unmuted.
He's unmuted now.
No, I'm asking you to unmute, Peter.
Peter, you need to unmute. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. I muted myself when the siren was going off right behind me.
But like everybody's in Lake Truesdale, so it was going off for all of us. It was, anyway, go ahead, sorry.
All right. I would, this is a process and it will go on. And you will have other opportunities to speak. Although I don't think we will discuss it again until we've done a balloon test and some of the stuff that's been promised in this meeting by Homeland Towers. I would like to poll the board. Tony.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I like to thank everyone for the feedback and the emails regarding Optimum cable or internet coverage. We've had some successes. There's still more work to be done. So I'll ask again for folks to continue emailing per my instructions. And if anyone needs to or hasn't seen that posting or in our newsletter or email blast or on social media, you can reach out to me and I'll send the directions on how to do that and who to send the emails to. Another note in terms of utilities, NYSEG, they've been very cooperative in some of the things they're doing to mitigate and make the infrastructure more durable. We still have some issues with a circuit that originates in Pound Ridge and feeds Vista, South Salem area, especially Oak Ridge. They're going to be installing equipment to monitor the power in that circuit, both at the fire department, Vista Fire Department, and at the water plant in Oak Ridge. We expect that to happen within a couple of weeks or so. So I'm waiting for feedback from them on doing that. But yeah, they've done some updates to the infrastructure, and I'm hoping people are seeing improvements. Outages aren't as long as they used to be, and we'll keep pressing ahead with them to make sure that we mitigate this to the extent possible. So that's all I had, Peter.
Jane?
Can I request to go last?
Yes. Jen?
I have some updates from Dana from Parks and Rec. Session 2 of camp started today. They've had a great first 3 weeks. So kids that are coming in and not doing the full 6, we'll see how that group transitions in. But so far, Reed and the entire team over there is doing a really fantastic job. I know the feedback has been great so far. The pool's been open for a month now. Reservations are going well for the weekends. Weekdays are first come, first serve, and we're now open for all residents and school district residents as well. So for people who were interested in participating and had gotten, held back in the beginning, they can now contact Parks and Rec and go through that process with them. And again, special thanks to Michael. He's been doing a lot of work with the pool. OSPAC has been busy keeping the trailways open. They've made some updates over at Brownell. We still have playgrounds, bathrooms, basketball, and volleyball courts closed to public use at the moment. We can't manage keeping them sanitized. Hopefully at some point in the future that will change, but for now that's going to remain the same. We do have some limited sports taking place, soccer, baseball, softball, and flag football. And Pam Veith will be doing some limited senior events. There's an outdoor senior BYO picnic at Onatru this Wednesday. They haven't been out and about in public, and we're looking forward to having a social distance pool party for them in August at the town pool. Parks and Rec would like some feedback on programming for the fall. They want to get an idea of what people might be interested in. You can reach out to them at parks@lewisboro.gov.com. And that's it. Thank you.
Dan?
Nothing in particular here, other than say that I thank everybody for their inputs tonight, and I would just say that, at least from my point, and I think from some of others, we're not in a hurry, and that's actually why we're doing this. It's not even a hearing yet. We're just taking all the inputs, and we'll take it wherever it leads. I'm as interested as the rest of the folks here in getting more data and more information to make decisions around. So that's all.
I'd like to say one thing. Dean, it's really good to see you. And I see you haven't lost your voice.
Right. Okay, you're unmuted, Dean. You're unmuted.
You can reply, Dean.
I wanted to go back and say that I was the guy, Erica was the one, and it really was helpful to have a local police force. The ambulance corps was called somewhere else, had a problem that looked like it could have been potentially serious. Knock on wood, it looks like it wasn't that bad. So I spent the night in the hospital, but an out-of-town ambulance corps came in here because our ambulance corps was doing something else. They didn't know me. They didn't know anything of the perspective, how I was presenting to them. Erica was able to say she knew me, how I acted normally. She added tons of value that a state trooper or out-of-town ambulance corps was not a good mix to have me properly evaluated.
Dean, I didn't want to use your name at the beginning because I didn't have your permission.
And she
Not
was,
at all. She
and
was
she was
great.
great, and she was a great support to me. It's Liza. She was a great support.
Thank you.
Jane, you wanted to go last, you're last.
Yes, I wanted to go last to address a specific comment that I was not prepared to address at tonight's polling of the board, but since it was brought to our attention, I would like to address it. So I wanted to go last. So thank you for granting me that opportunity at my request. I think it's a nice segue to talk about Erica Holtz, who is a valued member of our police force. She is one of our 3 full-time employees, and I enjoy having her on the force and having her as the only female on our force, which is something that I hope to change going forward. It would be nice to have a little bit more diversity there. I also wanted to mention specific to Parks and Rec. I gave my feedback already, but I did want to say that my daughters have really been enjoying the private tennis lessons that Gail Asher is providing. And so I would highly recommend those for people. They're easy to schedule. You just call Laura Stone at Parks and Rec and she makes it easy peasy for you. And also tennis camp will be running for 2 weeks if there is enough interest. So if you're interested in tennis camp for your children and it's 4 hours a day for 4 days a week or something like that, they're looking to run it in 2 weeks in August. So go ahead and give the rec department a call at 914-232-6162. Jen covered the camp and the pool, so I don't have to go there. I want to thank the community as well for the recent engagement. I like hearing from everybody, and these cell tower discussions were equally rigorous and hard when we made the decision about Cross River a couple of years ago, and now we have, you know, a similar grouping of people, and it's not the first rodeo. So your input is extremely valuable. I've heard every single one of you tonight, and I want you to know that. So thank you for your engagement, and keep staying engaged. I don't at all see us as a fractured community, to be 100% honest with you, which is going to lead me to my last point, which was that Simone Petromelis had commented, and she came on in and commented on some comments I had made from my private accounts on social media, which is not considered official discourse, but it was brought to our town board meeting. I do feel like this comment is one of a long list of personal attacks. A lot of things have been taken out of context. A lot of things have been assumed. It's very hard to address any of this or to move forward with the work as long as we are continuing this conversation. Simone, if I were to go back and do some direct quoting from your personal account on social media, I think that it would also bring great shame to this conversation. I have taken myself and this conversation offline. I'm happy to talk about it here. I'm happy to talk about it one-on-one. I'm happy for anybody to approach me one-on-one with the questions that Simone posed to me, because I understand. I'm under, I also want to make it super clear that I love living here. We've been here for 5 years now. It was a well-researched and well thought out move. There were definitely pros and cons. And I think that systemic racism is a real thing. I think systemic bias is a real thing. I was so happy to hear about people not having as many racist experiences here as they did in other parts of the, in the Bronx or in St. Louis, Missouri. And at the same time, I still think it's important to look at these conversations and have these conversations and open these conversations. And I'll be doing that as a private citizen, and we'll be doing it here on town. It's important that we talk about equity. And for anybody that I truly deeply offended, I apologize. That was never my intent. And that's all I have to say about that. And if anybody wants to approach me personally, again, about some of the personal comments I made on social media, please do, but I won't be publicly discoursing there anymore. And I do not believe that our community is reflected in those conversations. I do not experience us as a fractured community in the least. I do think that that discourse on social media is abhorrent, and we are being terrible role models for our children. And I will not participate. And when we talk about people moving here and what people want to see, people look at those groups and they think that represents who we are. And it absolutely does not. And so I would really like this attacking to stop. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
All right. I'd like to announce that the next town board meeting will be August 10th, 2020 at 7:30 via remote access like tonight. With that, I'd like to propose, unless Janet, I've forgotten something, I'd like to propose that we adjourn into executive session. Do I have a second?
Peter, you need to tell what you're going to discuss.
What?
To
You
discuss.
need to mention what you're going to discuss.
Oh, we are going to discuss personnel policy and land use of town land.
Peter, there is one person with their hand up. I don't know if we want to give them an opportunity to, or no.
I can't see who's got their hand up.
It's up to you.
Where are they?
I have to unmute them.
All right, unmute them and let them speak just before and they can speak for 2 minutes.
Jane is trying to
Pardon
say.
me, what? Okay.
Jane, you're muted.
I keep unmuting.
I'm respectfully asking for who it is that wants to talk and what it is they want to say.
Yeah, I think.
And is this just the supervisors? Does he just get to make this call?
No,
Is
he
that
didn't.
how we need
Okay.
rules about a majority, who gets to talk when. There was still.
Correct.
Jane,
So public comment.
I don't know who this is. I don't see
Well, the
why they
polling of the
shouldn't.
board is not the time for them to speak. Public comment. is
Public
the time
comment
for them to
period
speak.
is over. So it's up to the board.
It's up to the board, the 5 board members.
Okay, it's up to the board.
I say no.
All right, I would second that.
You say no? Okay, Tony.
It was only one hand. I would say yes, but yeah, just to give the opportunity. Wasn't somebody that spoke before?
It's not a back and forth. That's the
Who
whole
haven't I
point.
pulled? Oh,
If it's
Jen.
not safe, if it's a back and forth,
Jen.
not a back and forth. This is
I was
not-
going to say, now we have 2 hands, so I think this is a bit challenging if we're going to reopen the poll,
All right,
the comment
I'm sorry,
period. So
whoever it
how
is.
about this, for the people who have their hands raised, you can send an email and we can certainly include it in communications and answer it separately.
That's a good idea.
You're also welcome to speak at public comment. There are 2 public comment
All
periods.
right.
It's the public's time to speak and the board's time to speak is at the polling of the board.
I was just trying to be open to people.
Peter,
I would like.
I resent the implication that by
Do I have a
asking you to follow
second?
rules of order, that I am not trying to be open to people, which is what that statement says. It implies that I don't want to give people the opportunity to speak. And that is absolutely not the truth. I insist on rules of order. It keeps a business going and it keeps us safe. This is not a debate back and forth.
Can I have a second to go into executive session, please?
Second.
Discussion, so resolved.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, everyone.